This has been going on for over a year now. It started in February of 2020 on a Friday night. I went to bed around 11 and woke up in the middle of the night. I reached over to grab my phone to see the time and it was 2:59. Then a second later it ticked 3 a.m. and in that moment, I had a vision of a small child standing at my bedroom door. I quickly reached over to turn the lights on and every hair on my body stood up. I was truly terrified as I pulled a pistol from my nightstand and got up. I walked to my door and peeked around the corner, and the child ran down the hall and hid in the kitchen. I slowly walked towards the kitchen, turning on lights as I went, and when I got to the kitchen, the child ran and hid in the bathroom. It was like a game of hide and seek, but I never went to the bathroom to look. I went back to my room and stayed up the rest of the night. At 7 a.m. I called my brother and told him what happened, and he said it was all in my head, and just to forget about it. I went about my day and didn't think much of it until I got home. I could feel something watching me from that bathroom. I was uneasy all evening and kept telling myself it wasn't real. I went to my room and fell asleep. I woke up again in the middle of the night and reached over to look at my phone. And deja vu. It was 3 a.m. and the vision hit me hard. A child standing just around the corner of my bedroom door. Just like the night before, I got up and the child ran towards the kitchen. I slowly walked, turning on lights, and when I got to the kitchen, the child hid in the bathroom. I went back to my room and stayed up all night again. I never felt terror like that ever, and I've never had a paranormal experience or even believed ghosts were real. At around 7 a.m., I called my mother and told her what happened the last 2 nights. She quickly said stop joking around and asked if I talked to my grandmother. I told her I wasn't joking and I was truly terrified, and no, I didn't talk to Grandma. She told me that Grandma woke up just after 3 a.m. last night to a little girl crying in the hallway. I froze in fear, thinking what the heck is going on, and told Mom I'll call her back and that I was going to call my brother. I called my brother and he answered saying, I knew you were going to call. He said he had the worst nightmare of his life. In his dreams, he woke up and heard a noise in the basement, so he walked downstairs. When he got to the bottom of the stairs, the basement started filling up with water, so he turned around to go back up, and on the stairs was a little girl. Her hair was flowing in front of her face, reaching out for him, trying to smother him with her hair. He woke up and screamed, Mom! I could feel the fear in his voice. I told him that the exact same thing happened to me again, and that Grandma woke up to a child crying too. We all had an experience with a little girl in 3 different homes on the same night, and this is just the beginning. I got in my truck and had to drive about an hour to look at a job. I'm a hardwood flooring contractor. My mother, brother and I were group texting trying to figure out what was going on. My mother's a very religious person and she started to pray. Then she said she knows a woman who's involved in this paranormal stuff and called her. A few minutes later, she was in our group text telling us what to do. She told us to call upon Archangel Michael and Gabriel to bring the child to the light. At this point, I'm about 30 minutes into my drive, and I start praying, telling the girl to go to the light. Then I felt a breath on the back of my neck, and I clenched my steering wheel and screamed from the top of my lungs. I continued to pray out loud, and I said, go to the light, Aliona. Without even a thought, I actually said her name. I started shaking so bad, I had to pull over on the side of the highway. I'm not sure how it's spelled, but the name I said was Aliona. I'm 36 years old and I've never been so terrified in my life. Later that day, when I got home, I asked my mother to meet me there and pray with me, and then we did the same thing at my brother's house and my mother's place. That evening, I called a friend who is Native American and told her what was going on. She told me to cleanse the house and smudge it. I've never heard of smudging before, but I would try anything to make this go away. I went to my room and finally fell asleep with the lights on. I had a nightmare and woke up in the middle of the night. In the dream, I saw a woman standing over a bathtub and a small girl laying on her back in the tub full of water. The woman put her hands on the child's chest and pushed her under the water. The girl's head drifted over her face when she was submerged. I stayed up the rest of the night, just froze in my bed, completely numb. When I finally got out of bed around 6 a.m, I walked into the living room and both my computer monitors turned on. I stood, staring at the monitors, thinking an image was going to appear, but nothing happened. I then started to think that this girl was asking for help to solve her murder, and I needed to do research on the computer. I had to go to work, so I walked over and turned the monitors off. I began to pray, saying, please find someone else to do this. My brain doesn't comprehend this kind of stuff, and it really messes with me. I then started walking to the girl and said, please don't show yourself to me, and I will help. It's Monday, and I'd subcontracted a job about 30 minutes away in the country, and I've never met the customers. When I got to the job, a man with long white hair was standing outside his Adobe-style home. I got out of the truck and he started talking to me like we were best friends. He told me to come inside, and when he opened the front door, his wife was standing there. She was Native American, and behind her was a shrine of Indian artifacts. In my head, I was like, what the fuck is going on? My life is turning into a horror movie. On the shrine was a big abalone shell with a bundle of sage. I pointed to it and asked if this was for smudging, and that yesterday evening I talked to a friend that told me about burning sage. She said yes, and then asked me what was wrong. I told them everything that had been happening, and it was odd how good I felt around them. After talking for a few minutes, they showed me the 2 rooms that were getting floored and said they had to run a few errands in town. When they left, I was working in the back room and I saw 2 cats playing in the living room. At the same time, the cats stopped and both looked towards the bathroom and then ran and jumped in the tub. From the room, I couldn't see into the bathroom, but I could hear the shower curtain moving. I jumped up and ran outside until the customers got back. When I was standing by my truck, I started Googling paranormal investigators and pastors. This was seriously affecting me in my work, and I needed help. I glanced at the house and I could see the girl's hair flowing out of the bathroom window. When they got back, I had my cooler out, acting like I was eating lunch, and I didn't tell them what happened when they were gone. At the end of the day, the woman grabbed the abalone and sage off the shelf and gave it to me. When I got home, the first thing I did was light the sage and walk the whole house while saying a prayer. I immediately felt like a huge weight was lifted from me. I felt amazing. I got on the computer and began to search for anything about an accidental drowning and a girl named Aliona. I also wrote a few emails to the Colorado Paranormal Society and tried contacting pastors. I spent the whole evening searching about this girl, but I couldn't find anything. I went to bed feeling good, but I could still feel that the girl was in the bathroom. I woke up in the middle of the night to my dog jumping on me and growling towards the bedroom door. Once again, I stayed up the rest of the night, just frozen in fear. I've hardly slept in days, and I was mentally drained. At around 8 AM, I got a call from one of the priests I left a message for. I told him everything, and that I feel like this was a child who was murdered, but her death ruled accidental. He told me it was the devil's trick, and it wasn't my place to help her. Then he said a prayer and hung up. No one else has responded to my emails or messages, and nothing's changed. She's with me 24/7. Anywhere I go, she's right there in the bathroom or hiding just behind a corner. My brother and grandmother haven't had anything else happen to them. It's been just over a year now, and I'm still being tormented every day. I've tried contacting people and talking to anyone who will listen, but I still have no answers. The visions are so bad and real that it physically hurts. There's a lot more that has happened, but this was how it all started. I'm reaching out to anyone that might have answers. My friends and I have always been quite fond of going out urbex exploring. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's when you go out and look for abandoned and derelict buildings to explore and photograph. We didn't go out searching for the haunted side of things, we just enjoyed the eeriness and also the beauty of old, abandoned places. Living in Scotland, a lot of these abandoned places are normally surrounded by amazing scenery, from hills and mountains to thick forests and lush fields, so we always made a day out of it when we did go exploring. One house in particular was our favourite, so much so that we had already visited a couple of times prior to this experience. Myself and two of my best friends, we'll call them C and B, decided to go back, but the condition of the place had declined quite rapidly since the last time we'd been, and everything seemed very unstable, but we didn't let that stop us. Finding that our usual entry spots had been boarded up, we felt quite defeated, but decided to look for another entry anyway. After searching around for a while, we noticed that the roof on one of the lower parts of the house had been damaged by fire and was practically all gone. It wasn't the easiest to get up to, using a tree and each other to do so, but we finally got in. It was going relatively normal. We were wandering around the inside, searching and admiring the rooms we could still get into, being terrified by the occasional bird being spooked by our footsteps, and taking photos of the amazing architecture. However, something was different this time. The whole place felt off and a little more eerie than it normally did. I've always been what would you describe as spiritually inclined, so I felt this more than what my other friends did. One of them was a complete skeptic, so he just brushed it off and said we were over-exaggerating and making things up. His mind was going to be completely changed after leaving this house. After exploring the top 3 floors as much as we could, cringing at the spray paint art the vandals had left, we were on the ground floor just having a chat and discussing how much the house's condition had really declined. We were standing in one of the hallways, almost in a triangle formation. I was standing in a door frame with my back towards the empty room with C to my left and B to my right. I was still feeling a little uneasy, but I didn't give much thought to it. As we were all conversing about the plans for the rest of the day, I felt something on my back. It felt like someone had run their hand down my back. From the base of my neck to the center of my back, I felt a firm, consistent pressure until the pressure tapered off, down to the base of my back. It was over within seconds. I felt all the colour drain from my face as I frantically jumped forward with a scream. B and C both looked at me in confusion and asked what happened, and if I'd hurt myself. In a haze of confusion and dizziness, I wasn't able to form any words, never mind describing what I just felt. I regained my bearings and took a couple of deep breaths before trying my best to explain the sensation of being touched. B's face turned a little pale as she saw how serious I was being. However, C was a skeptic. He laughed and thought I was joking, or that I'd accidentally hit something without realizing, or a bug had hit me. I knew that wasn't the case, because for a split second before it happened, I felt every single hair on my body stand up as a warning to what was about to happen. Being slightly freaked out, B and myself managed to convince C that it was time to leave. On top of what had just happened, it was also getting a little cold. While making our way to the same section we had entered through, I started to feel a burning sensation run down my back, like someone had taken hot coals or a flame down my back. Starting to freak out again, I asked B to check if anything was there, asking her what was wrong. I automatically knew something was wrong because she didn't give a response. She was just silent. Next thing I knew, B was calling over C to come and look, which made my anxiety spike up more. From the look on C's face, I became increasingly worried. They both nervously told me that there were marks going down my back. Obviously not being able to see my back myself, I then asked them to take a photo for me to see. Looking at the photo, there were 3 distinctive scratches going down my back, exactly where I'd felt someone or something touch me. At first, C was convinced I'd done it myself or caught myself on something, but after examining the scratches more, he determined that it couldn't have been. The scratch went under my bra strap, which would have been impossible for me to do without them noticing. At this point, we're all trying to keep our calm while internally freaking out. We tried to make our way out as quick as we could without injuring ourselves. Climbing back over the wall of the house and through the hole where the roof used to be, we collectively walked a few feet away from the house and stopped to look at it. Still trying to understand what had just happened, we all agreed that we'd go back to the car and never come back there. The walk back to the car, which took around 20 minutes, was relatively uneventful. Apart from a continuous uneasy feeling that we were being watched or followed, and occasionally thinking that we could hear footsteps behind us, it was actually quite peaceful, taken in the Scottish countryside. We got to the car where we sat and had a smoke, still trying to completely calm ourselves down. It's safe to say that after that day, C took a long time to process the events, but undoubtedly became a believer. We swore to never come back to this house, but for some reason, we're always drawn back to it. It's like an urge to come back and visit, like an itch that you can't quite scratch. Maybe we're just drawn in by the eeriness or the mystery around that day. Or maybe it's something more than that. I'm 21 years old, and up until last month, I thought I had met my grandmother's father, in person. This is long, so bear with me. Now that I'm older and able to better communicate my memories, I'm learning I was quite the lightning rod for spiritual activity. One of the things that made it stand out to the most was something that occurred recently. Dots were connected, everything happened over the span of my life. I've always had a very strong tie to my great-grandfather Leo, though I only met him when I was much younger, or so I had thought. One of my most vivid memories, that is basically a core memory for me, is when I went to visit my family in Washington. I was about 2 when this happened. I remember the home we entered, picking out a stuffed animal from my great-grandmother's collection, then going on walks. One of the walks I remember the most was walking down the sidewalk holding an old man's hand. It was sunny, we were in the shade, and he kept asking me, "Do you want to see the money trees?" Of course I wanted to see the so-called money trees. Well, he walked me down the sidewalk and we stopped in front of a flowering tree. Not a single dollar on it, obviously. He didn't miss a beat. "That's a money tree, let's go." 19 years later, I tell my mother about this memory, and she cannot for the life of her figure out who I'm talking about. We didn't travel with my grandparents that year. It was just her, my father, and I. I tell my grandmother about the story, and she was in shock for a bit. I couldn't figure out why she was so surprised. Turns out her father, Leo, used to walk her all over Washington and show her these money trees. Me and my grandmother both took time describing the plant and both ended up with the same answer. It didn't raise much question for me. I relayed this to my mom. It makes sense that Grandpa Leo would show both me and my nana to the money trees. She was confused and told me that I in fact had never met my grandfather. The year we'd visited, I had not visited with any older males in the family, but we were there to visit my great-grandfather Leo's grave, who had passed away before I got to fly down and meet him. While at his grave, my mother tells me that I ran up to another person's grave who had a puppy dog statue and began petting it. She told me to stop. Without missing a beat, I spun around and said, "Grandpa said I can pet the puppy." And I went back to touching the statue. My grandfather raised and trained dogs throughout his life. My grandmother's parents died when I was very young. My great-grandfather Leo passed away before I got to meet him. At my grandmother's home, she has a photo of both of my great-grandparents. It's been there since I was young, till now. When I just started to be able to walk, I would walk up to the table that had a photo of my grandparents on it. I was very talkative and would sit down myself in front of the table and talk. I would talk. When my family would try to talk to me or play along, I would get very upset. I would tell my grandmother I was talking to Grandpa. Most would say I was just talking to the photo, but this would continue while I was near the photo or even away from the photo. When I slept at my grandmother's, I had to say goodnight to my great-grandpa Leo and my great-grandmother before I'd go to bed. I also have a long history of waking up at witching hour, 3 a.m. This would occur every night while I was at my grandmother's. As I got older, other things would happen. My grandpa Leo used to carry out a pair of nail clippers in his pocket everywhere he went. None of us children knew about this. Since I can remember a pair of nail clippers, it's the hardest thing to find in our home. Though I didn't pay much attention till I was older. While in middle school one day, my mom finally brought it up. She was tired of the nail clippers going missing, and the culprits being me and my 2 younger brothers. So she questioned us where the nail clippers were, but none of us had them or had touched them. It's gross, but my 2 brothers never clipped their nails, and I bit my fingernails off before they were long enough to clip. Once she got upset and would question us, the nail clippers would mysteriously appear on the kitchen island. This proceeded to happen on multiple occasions. even after my mother made an effort to hide her nail clippers. In short, we're convinced my grandfather will steal our nail clippers. I honestly haven't bought a pair to this day because I know this will happen. Another thing is that my grandpa Leo had one tattoo, that was all. He was in the Air Force, and during his time he got an eagle tattoo on his arm. He hated it, but also it's something that we remember him by. Every time we speak about him or an anniversary comes up, we see eagles all day. I live where there are eagles, but it isn't necessarily a daily occurrence for us. Yesterday morning, when I decided to post about him without noticing, it was the anniversary of his death. Today, each time I got into the car, I saw an eagle. This is also ironic because I refer to the planes he loved as the birds, which also fly over whenever I miss him. They're F-22s. Now that I'm older, he doesn't speak to me as blatantly as he did when I was a child. Though growing up with the spiritual influences I had in my home, I know the signs when I see them. This happened when I was about 17. I moved out on my own for about 9 months. I had a friend who lived in the walkout basement suite of this old house on WYE. It wasn't horrible, but the backyard had a dilapidated pool and the backyard full of stuff. Nice trees, lot with a large driveway. I did use a Ouija board in this house, but nothing really happened. Just got really creeped out. On one occasion, when I was alone in the house, both roommates were gone. My boyfriend also was not home, and the upstairs landlord was gone. Me quietly reading a book in the living room. I could hear someone walking around upstairs. I figured animals, no big deal. But then I heard something opening cupboards and open the fridge door. Odd. I didn't think anyone was home. So I checked out front for cars. Nobody. Now there were some stairs that led up to the landlord's half of the house, and I went up there and peeked under the door. It was locked. I saw the fridge door open and close and someone walk away from the fridge. I knocked and said hello to see if anyone was home. Suddenly, silence. Not a sound. Now, I had nowhere to go, and I was really weirded out by myself. I just waited until someone got home, and I still felt weird. So I went up and asked the landlord when he came home. I asked him if he invited anyone over while he was gone. He said no and asked me why. I told him what I heard and saw. He admitted to thinking the house was haunted because he's always finding cupboards open around the house. Was that you? This was a bit of a party house, so the kids that drank here would line up bottle caps along the backsplash. It was as if someone leaned forward and whispered into the ear and said my name. It was so clear. Ice ran down my spine. I shook my boyfriend awake. Was that you? Did you say my name? Barely conscious him. No, I was snoozing. I couldn't sleep all night, and I decided right then I was moving out. About 11 years ago, my grandfather was sick for a long time. He was in the hospital for esophageal cancer, and he wasn't doing well. He wasn't gaining weight, he was very skinny. They couldn't get him into chemo, and the doctor said he should be home with us to prevent healthcare-associated infections. My older brother would come over in the morning to help my mum with him when I had to leave. I'd woken up to apply for college. Grandma was laying on the couch doing good. I said good morning and rushed to the computer to get my document finished to send off. I was in there with my mum getting everything ready. Came out and passed my brother and my grandpa. My grandfather was up in his scooter, and he pitched forward in his chair. My brother caught him. He was choking and couldn't breathe. No one knew what to do, and I was the only one trained for CPR. I was going to have to perform CPR on this poor man's frail body. I was about to start, and I heard him gasp. It wouldn't matter how much I pushed. And the EMS arrived before I could even really start. We lived very close to a hospital. His airway was completely closed. He ended up passing away. I saw the light leave his eyes. That's not even an exaggeration. The cloudiness left behind was so sudden. I knew he left his body. I've seen a human soul leave their body. My 7-year-old son just informed me that he's been seeing people in my home. I was standing at my kitchen island with my back to my dining room, and my son was on the opposite side, facing me. It was bright outside, and we were talking about his homework and laughing, when he looked behind me and pointed, saying, "There's a girl in a pink shirt behind you." I said, "What?" He said, "A girl with a pink shirt. She just walked across the room behind you." My heart started to pound, so I, of course, looked and said, "Are you sure?" But he was adamant. Now, the night before, he and I were walking out of my bathroom into my bedroom, which was dark, when he said, "Mom, I just saw a rabbit hop under your bed," and he asked if I saw it too. I laughed. I said it was just a shadow, honey, and blew it off. When he told me about the girl in the pink shirt, he said, "Mom, my brain is seeing people in our house." He said it just started, but I've seen a few people. This is a normal, everyday kid. He plays baseball and loves everything boy-related. I'm a nurse practitioner, so I know what signs to look for when it comes to mental illness, and there are none. I will say that when my son was born, he was very ill. He was born at 26 weeks and wasn't supposed to make it through the night. He obviously did, but when he was a few months old, he went into cardiopulmonary arrest in my arms and technically died. I did CPR until help came, and they eventually revived him. It makes me wonder if that had something to do with it. You know, the whole, if you died, you can see dead people? Please, God, I hope it's not that. He's also had an unusual concern with death for his age. I don't mean in a creepy way, I mean concerned about when my husband and I will die and will see him, etc. Also, since his grandfather passed away, he always asks about him. Where is he? Is his soul still here? So and so forth. My 11-year-old never asked any of these questions. My family moved into a nice, fairly new little subdivision when I was about 6 years old. There was a little patch of woods in the backyard, probably about half a football field deep, that separated our house from the house behind us. I remember there being a fallen down tree that my twin sister and I would jump around on. It was still rooted in the ground, just bent over, so it was bouncy when we jumped or walked on it. A few weeks after moving there, I was in the woods jumping around on the tree by myself, when a little girl walked up to me and asked to play. She wore a pink dress, had a teddy bear, her hair in pigtail braids. I thought she lived at the house behind us, so we started to play almost every day. But only when my twin sister wasn't outside with me. I remember my parents just laughing at me when I'd talk about her, and having little whispered conversations with other family and neighbours about my new friend. At the time, I never thought much about it, but now I know what they thought she was, just an imaginary friend. I mean, my twin sister had never seen or played with her, and neither did my little sister, who was 3 at the time. She wouldn't come around if they were out there with me, and she always hid my parents if they came outside while we were playing. One day, when we were playing, it was about to storm, so I told her we needed to get home. She told me she didn't have a home, and I immediately invited her to stay with me. I asked my mom, thinking she was imaginary. My mom said yes. She spent the night with me that night, and the next morning I got up and went to school. I never saw her again after that. Years later, I was writing a creative non-fiction story for my creative writing class. I decided to write about my imaginary friends and asked my parents what I used to do with her and what they remember. That's when my mum told me that apparently, that day when I went to school after she spent the night, my mum was cleaning the house. The electronic toys in our playroom kept going off, making noises or winding up and walking on their own. It started to freak her out. After going to turn them off a few times, and eventually she brought the entire toy box downstairs and put it on the couch to go through and figure out which ones were going off. She says she thought they needed new batteries, or that we hadn't turned them off all the way or something. My mum has always been kind of sensitive and had seen spirits before, but only on a few instances. So she didn't really think ghost when it came to the girl because she never saw her. But the toys still freaked her out, since she knew that I'd let her spend the night before. Anyway, she started vacuuming the living room, and as she walked past the stairs, she saw a little girl with a pink dress, teddy bear, and pigtail bands standing at the top of them. She screamed, and the girl vanished. And that's the day I stopped seeing her. I ended up doing research after that, and even got a hold of the landlord for the house while writing my essay. and I never found anything about a girl dying in that area or previous owners losing a child or anything like that. Before the neighborhood was built, it was just a forest. There was a gas explosion in the town in 1957, which killed, I think, 12 people, but I haven't been able to find ages or pictures, just names. And I don't remember hers, so I can't draw her all that definitely. So I'm not sure what her history is or why she was there. Just a couple of weeks ago though, I was over at the next door neighbour's house. Our parents are still friends with their son, with my younger sister tutoring their son. My little sister is only 5, and I let her go outside and play while I tutored. When it was time to leave, I went outside to get her and saw her in the backyard of the house we lived at, jumping on the fallen tree, giggling and talking to herself. I told her we needed to leave, and she ran to me, turned around and waved goodbye. I asked her about it and she said it was just her new friend. So the question still remains, was she an imaginary friend or a ghost? My mom swears she saw her, and I remember seeing her as a kid too. But at the same time, my mum could have just freaked herself out and remembered my description of her, and her mind played a trick on her. But if that were the case, how would my little sister make a new friend that nobody else can see, playing on the same tree I used to play on with her?